Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good?
Ready?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. This is episode number 1 of the new year, episode number 93 overall. We are going to do another 20-minute Scratching the Surface episode, and this episode is called Designing Your Best 2019.
Hell yes. Way to bring the energy, by the way.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Ellen and I were talking right before we recorded this that we're both super tired, so I'm trying to bring that energy.
Yes.
So we were talking about how setting intentions is great. You know, having goals for the new year is great.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people say, I need to do more of this in order to accomplish my goals for this year, to accomplish my intentions. But you also need to do less of other things.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I feel like that doesn't always get the attention that is deserved. So we actually made a list. We have a more of column, a less of column, and then we had a same of column. And then we realized that that doesn't really work, and we'll explain why.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So do we want me to go into the same of column a little?
Sure.
So I think right out of the gate, my more of column is huge, man.
Right.
Less of is smaller, and then same of is basically non-existent. And I think that it kind of makes sense, because I asked Kevin, I was like, Kevin, you know, while we were doing this, before this episode, I was like, are you happy with last year? And you immediately said, oh yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And and then you asked me, and I was like, yeah, no, I am. But I'm also kind of like,
Set the timer.
I felt like I was just tapping my potential. And so when you're doing this exercise, it's interesting because when you're going through the same of column, we kind of chose that. And you realize real quick, there's almost nothing you want to do the same amount of, because you want to level up. You want to redesign. You want to evolve, right?
I think a good speedometer, barometer, whatever ometer you want to use, we always say that the life I'm living now, if I continue to live the current life that I have, but I grow every year.
Yeah.
In this, I want to do the same. I want to do more podcasting.
Definitely.
And learn more from the guests and have, continued growth in relationship with the guests. I want to do more traveling. Like, this year was really good.
Yeah.
And I feel like I was really stretched to do everything I did.
Yeah.
But I think if this year happened the same exact next year, I wouldn't be living up to my standards. I wouldn't be living up to my potential.
You wouldn't be progressing.
No. So I think next year could be very similar to this with the topics and the categories and the activities that I'm doing, but I just want them to grow exponentially.
Yeah, we want more of this.
Yes.
More of the things that we did.
Yes.
So for your more of column, what are some things that jump off the page? And by the way, for the listeners, more of, less of, same of, 2018 to 2019. Like, what do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? And then same of, maybe there's something that you did really well. We wrote a few things that you want to keep doing that well.
Yeah, so in more of, and this is something that I think the listeners will also deal with, when you evolve and you set bigger goals and different goals and you realize, like, how do I explain this? So behind the scenes, right? I put behind the scenes for the podcast, courses for the website, more website work. Like, that was non-existent last year.
Yeah, it didn't even exist.
So I don't even get to do same of. I have to jump to brand new and more of.
And more of,
So that's, if, let's see, if you're going to start yoga this year,
Yeah.
and you've never done yoga before,
then it wouldn't be more of.
It wouldn't
It
be-
would be a brand new.
it would be a
more of.
brand new more of.
Yeah.
Which means you don't have anything to fall back on. You just have to get right into it.
Yep.
Right? So that can be a little bit intimidating.
For sure.
But when you sign your name on the line that says, this is what I'm going to do, then you just put your head down and start doing. You don't have to do it all at once. Baby steps. But so more of website, podcast stuff, behind the scenes, courses, forum, online training programs, all of that stuff, coaching, all of that stuff.
Yeah, coaching I put too.
There's got to be a lot. So, and it's funny because obviously I'm transitioning from a job,
Yeah.
right? This was the first year ever I haven't had quote unquote real job.
Yeah.
And I've been an entrepreneur and chasing my dreams.
Yeah.
So naturally, of course, now I have to focus on this is your thing now. You have to make sure you're doing so much of this.
All
so
of the
much more.
things. Yeah.
So I think this is great for that reason. Because we're looking back on a year and we're looking forward to a new year. And you're right in this spot where you can say all right, what worked for me? What didn't work for me?
Yeah.
Because success is not what most people think it is. It's habits.
Yeah.
And right now we're figuring out the habits that, did us good.
Yeah.
Did us good.
Did us well. did
us
did
well.
well for us.
And the habits that didn't. So we're going to try to lose those bad habits.
Yeah, I highly recommend all of you doing this 3-column exercise. You're going to realize real quick, there's some interesting things on here. So one of them I put was snowboarding.
Yeah.
I want to do more snowboarding. And another one I put was dressing nicer. I don't know. I just want to dress nicer. I kind of like it, So that's one of them. I also want to afford nicer clothes. So I put money on here as well.
You got it. So when it comes to snowboarding, what do you have to do? What would you, Alan Lazarus, have to do in order to snowboard more this year?
Plan day trips to snowboard.
What
more.
else?
Probably keep a closer eye on the weather. Yeah.
What else? Because
Get new equipment.
There's so many things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many things.
Get new equipment.
Get your work done faster so you don't feel like shit
exactly.
when you're snowboarding.
Yeah. So
right?
you can have a permission slip to go
Yeah.
and enjoy.
But I think for the listeners, look at that. Alan had one thing he wanted to do, and there's 7 things he has to do in order to accomplish it.
Right, yeah.
That's how most things are.
Exactly.
And I think we overlook
a lot of that.
a lot of those.
Yeah, even I, just in that moment, I'm like, you're like, what else? I'm like, well, oh shit, there's a
There's
lot
a lot.
more. Yeah.
There's always a lot.
Because on the surface value, when you say, oh, I want to snowboard more, it's like, okay, great.
Yeah.
But that's like a New Year's resolution kind of thing. It's like, yeah, but what daily actually has to happen? Yeah. Okay, look at the weather more. Get new equipment. I didn't even think of that. I need new equipment.
Yeah.
My snowboard is old as shit, right? So there's some other interesting ones on here, like writing my book. I want to write more. I love to write. I just haven't written as much as I used to. I want to be warmer with others and stronger with myself. So when I'm in solitude, I really want to buckle down and be disciplined and work hard. But when I'm with others, I want to be present and warm.
I know that's something you've been working on, so I think that it's beautiful to carry over, the things that we've been doing.
Yeah.
But realize it just takes work. Whatever it is you want to do is just going to take work.
Right.
And as long as you're willing, that's why it's let's try to pull back the curtain on what it's going to take to succeed with these things. You said something the other day when we were with, I think we were with T-Mac, one of the last days we were with T-Mac. In order, you said one of your coaches said something. I hope you know what I'm talking about.
No, I do. So one of my coaches basically said, Alan, from now on, whenever you set a goal, the first thing I want you to do is write down whatever it is you're willing to do. What are you willing to give up to achieve that?
Yeah.
And normally it's whatever it takes. But really going through it logistically and saying, okay, because we were talking about this before the podcast. You only have 24 hours in a day. 7 or 8 of those are sleeping. So you've got 16 to 17 solid working day hours each day. So where are you spending those? One of the quotes I always go back to, and the compound effect reading that I'm going to give later actually has this quote in it. You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. And so if you want 2019 to be different than 2018, better, then you're going to have to do better. And more importantly, you're going to have to get rid of the things that did not serve you. Because if you look back at 2018, I'm sure all of us can sit there and go, you know what? I did a lot of that, but it didn't really add that much value to my life or the life of others, right? Maybe that wasn't consistent with my core values. So one of them I have for less of is drinking. I think I drank 3 times in all of 2018, which for me is actually really small amount. But the times that I did drink, I drank more than I wanted. And Kevin and I were just talking about that. I drank at a wedding. Pat and Gina, congratulations. I had an absolute blast. I had a great time, but it's like a really too high of a price for me to pay physically when it comes to like my weight training and like how I feel and my level of productivity. So for me, I just think that drinking didn't serve me very much. Yeah. If anything, those were just reminders of why I kind of don't drink, you know?
I'm in the same ballpark. We got home and I celebrated.
Yeah.
I was in a great mood. I celebrated with people I care about, and I didn't feel so good the next day, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know,
to be transparent here, Kevin and I both may or may not have puked.
Yeah, we got not even together either.
I was
hanging out at my house.
We haven't spoken once.
No,
since
as predicted.
Yeah,
I predicted that. But you know, it's one of those things. It doesn't really bother me because I don't do it often. When I do it, it's planned, so it's like it's whatever to me. That doesn't even cross my radar.
So, what's an example of something you really do want to do less of, though?
Procrastinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I procrastinate. I'm really good at that.
I would argue. So I was just in Florida with you for a month.
Yeah.
I think you work insanely hard.
I
think it's awesome.
A new habit.
Okay. Oh, true.
Yeah, that was me. That was me trying to instill new habits.
So I'm seeing you at your best down there.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing me at not my best, not my worst, but like my level of productivity, which was much lower down in Florida than it normally is because I have my life very set up to succeed.
It was easy for me to succeed down there just because there was nothing else to do. It was eat, sleep, work,
train.
Yeah. And then like the TV wasn't a smart TV in my room, so I couldn't even watch TV most nights. So for the first like 3 weeks, I didn't even have TV, so I just went to bed when it was time to go to bed. You know, so I didn't have anything to do but work.
So when you say procrastinate less, what specifically?
So I have a habit of like getting overwhelmed. Like right now, actually I cleaned them before, but I'll have like 8 or 9 DMs.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I can't do that right now. And then I put it off and I put it off, and it's like, then I'll like slap myself in the face, like, all right, just do this. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's just like the worksheets.
Yeah.
When I had to do the worksheets for my program in Florida, just to give a little context to the listeners, Alan said, we have a program that we pay for that you can do that on.
Yeah.
And I just snapped my fingers, went outside, and started working on it. Now, I want to do that with everything.
Same.
When something has to get done, I just want to snap my fingers and say, okay, it's time.
Just get started.
Just get started. Just start doing it. And don't let your mind complicate these simple tasks. They're not that hard.
No, and yeah.
You know, but that goes back to knowing yourself. I know that I overthink things.
Yep.
Don't give yourself time to overthink things. Just
How
think
quick
about
can
them and
you
do
go
it.
from thought to action?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the listeners probably struggle with procrastination too. I'm sure that's one of the less of for most people.
Yeah.
I've worked really hard. It's funny that you're saying that because last year and the year before, I've worked really hard to not procrastinate. And I feel like that's not on my less of list because I feel like I've really conquered,
What's on your less of?
that. Wasting time, I would say, on things that I don't think are essential. What's an example of that? Something that I waste time on. I think that I want to do a better job of time boxing high-level tasks. This is going to be hard to explain, but basically, we talk about this. So what's the 5 things that matter most to the podcast, right? And so those 5 things should take priority over all the other shit that needs to get done. So I think that I need to have more clarity around the daily disciplines that need to get done and stop doing the less important things. Like sometimes I'll get lost in social media, like reading different posts or whatever, and we've all been there. So that's one thing. Worrying about things that are outside my control.
I have that as well.
Yeah, so being more present in the moment, because here's the thing that I want to bring to the listeners right now. The Power of Now, right? So obviously that's a book by Eckhart Tolle that I actually haven't read yet, but I will tell you that I heard a quote by Wayne Dyer once where he said, you're building your own magnificent castle, and now is the only building block you have. So what you're spending this time on right now is building your future. And so if you are spending your now on worrying about something that's completely outside your control, you're quite literally taking those building blocks and like throwing them away, you know? And we do that without thinking it, but I really want to worry less. I feel like I've had a little bit too much anxiety over the past few months, and I feel like I used to. Talked to you about this in Florida. I said that I feel like I used to have a stronger grasp on my inner world, and I used to be more inner directed. Now I feel like I have kind of stopped working on that because it's like if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing.
I realized that my anxiety is like a legitimate thing on this trip. Like I told you that when we were driving down to Boca Raton, I just like felt bad. Like my I don't know how to explain it. I don't know if you're listening and you have anxiety, you know what it is. Like, but it's super hard to explain. It's just like everything inside of you is just like moving really fast.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. But that was when I told you, I was like, yo, I'm pretty sure that's what this is. Like, I didn't feel good before we left. Like, my throat was tight. Like, everything was happening.
Yeah.
And now I think for my less of, I want less of that. And I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to go about that necessarily. But I think realizing that that's something that I suffer from is going to be the initial step, because I had, 3 anxiety attacks in a matter of a month this year. I've never had one before in my entire life. I didn't even know that was a thing.
It's a new challenge. It makes sense. Pressure cooker, all the stuff you're doing, right? So now, doing new things brings new challenges. Yeah. So this is something that you're now aware of and you want to work on. The key is how do you work on that? Yeah,
that's. I think mindfulness is one of those. I want to try meditation. I got myself some CBD oil, which is supposed to be very good for all of those things. Anxiety. So
Big Nate is actually starting to sell CBD oil because it's now legal federally.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
supposed
good.
to be the greatest thing ever of all time. It's like coconut oil, basically. Like it just heals everything.
Yeah,
but that was kind of a tough realization for me to figure out. Like, oh, this thing that you're dealing with is not going anywhere right
unless
now,
you change it.
Unless I change it.
Yeah.
So I want to be more cognizant and conscious of that.
Yeah.
And I wrote down more yoga. I did a lot of yoga this year compared to what I've done. Yeah. I could have done a lot more.
So you weren't, like, consistency is like everything.
Yeah. I was not consistent.
Yeah, you weren't consistent.
No, I mean, look at Florida. I didn't do yoga. We did it a couple times,
yeah, when we went. Class,
and somebody was like, hey, you want to do yoga?
Foam rolling I put on here too. There's just certain things that need to get done for you to keep the building afloat.
Well, I think it's easy for us, especially me, to look back and say, last year was the first year I did yoga. Yeah. Good
right.
for you, man.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I should have done it more, though. And so I need to do more this year.
I don't even know if it should have. I want to do it more.
I want to.
Right? Because, and that's the thing with these lists. Like, when you look back at 2018, like, think about the happiest times you had. Like, what were the things you were doing? I'm more convinced of this now than ever. Like, if you're happy and fulfilled and like really living your dreams, what are you doing differently? Really hone in on that and try to do more of that. Because if you're unhappy, you were mentioning before this podcast, you said the other day you were just sad.
Yeah.
And I basically said, Kevin, well, if you think about it, since we got home, you're not really doing any of the things that would give you progress and like make you happy. Right. So it makes sense that you're kind of sad right now.
And for the listeners, that is designed. I told myself I was going to give myself a couple days when I got back, but when you're so used to doing everything, then you go to doing nothing, it's like you kind of feel like you're screwing up.
Yeah.
But this is a necessary period where
reset.
Tomorrow we're traveling, we're going to Boston to podcast, so it's like it's starting back up for sure. But that's a great point.
I think if you aren't happy or you don't feel well, like emotionally, right? Because we do the joy, happiness, fulfillment thing. That's a different episode. But it's probably because you're not doing things that are consistent with your highest values. Yeah. And that's why this exercise is so important, is because, we can be really hard on ourselves and say, oh, last year, like, we didn't do enough. That's not what this is.
No.
This is, last year was awesome. How do we make next year even more awesome?
Yeah. I think it's crazy how such a simple exercise, like, just make 3 columns and write some stuff in it.
Right.
But the way you play it out in your mind, like, if you really dive into this and actually, like, commit, because that's what it is. You can write it down and close your notebook and never look at it again. Or you can commit to, like, how did I really feel? Where do I think I would have been happier if I did more of this? I would have felt better if I did less of this. Like, that's a thing. And you might find that I wish, maybe in your less of column, it says, I wish I partied less.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it really starts, because then you got to think to yourself, okay, why did I party so much?
Exactly.
Oh, is it because this new relationship I have? That person likes to party. Like,
and now you have to shift.
Yeah, and you can see how these questions can really affect the way you live your life.
Yeah.
So, again, we always say that being hyper-conscious is hard at times, because you got to ask yourself the tough questions and you got to answer them with the tough answers. But it will pay off. It may hurt in the moment, but it's feedback, and we always talk about the feedback. You're going to get it eventually.
So to bring this to the listeners, I want to bring context to what Kevin just said, because that's super important. So I put being cold is one of the things I want to do less of. One of the things in the gym, like I feel like I'm unapproachable. Someone told me yesterday, I think it was Natalie Wills, she said that she has a friend who's like a huge fan of our podcast. And she's like, do you think I could go up to him at the gym? And Natalie's like, of course. He's like a friendly guy. Like, why wouldn't you? And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I bet you she thinks like that would be really disruptive to me because I'm very intense in the gym. And while I don't want to be the happy-go-lucky, like talk instead of lift weights kind of guy, I definitely don't want people to feel like they can't approach me, right? So what I've really set an intention to do is to be less cold towards others, and now I have to really go underneath that. Like, why am I being cold, right? Why am I being so stoic or so statue-like? Why aren't I making eye contact and smiling and being warm, right? So I think the main reason is because I haven't been happy with how my intensity in my workouts. So let's say, this is where you dive deep and answer the hard questions. If I were to do a better job of waking up earlier, getting to the gym earlier when there's less people there, and then getting my hour in of really hardcore, intense, focused work, now I can be less
Quickest
cold.
20 minutes ever.
Right. Now I can be less cold with others because I'll be happy with my workout. Long story short, when my workouts suck, that to me is less self-care, and therefore I have less, warmth and love to give others. Because when you're letting yourself down, you're going to be less loving towards other people.
Yeah, and I think that the whole purpose of this episode is so you can figure out where you may feel like you let yourself down this year and you can prevent it from happening again. I think that it's often hard to look in the mirror and say, like, this is where, for lack of better terms, I screwed up. Like, I screwed up by focusing on what I can't control.
Yeah.
I screwed up by letting my fears control certain aspects of my life. I screwed up by procrastinating, by making excuses, by not sleeping enough. Like, that was my doing.
Yeah.
Sure, there were circumstances associated with that, but I need to change my habits. A lot of these circumstances aren't going anywhere, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're here to stay.
And
so
if
I
you
gotta
don't
figure it
own
out.
it, if you don't own it,
I
then you can't
do
change it.
Right.
So you have to admit the mistake.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to sit here and say the year wasn't awesome.
Right.
Best year I've ever had
sure.
in my entire
For
life,
sure.
like hands down.
Yeah.
But if we don't sit there and look at the things we could have done better and own the fact that we made a mistake, you're just going to keep making the same mistake.
It's funny that you and I, this will be good because you and I were looking at your Facebook, or was it your Facebook or your Instagram?
Instagram.
Yeah,
Oh my
we went
goodness.
all the way back to the beginning of Alan's Instagram, and he'll do his dramatic reading after we talk about this because we're already over on time, per the usual. But we were going back, and I remember one of the quotes that you used to say is like, if you look back a year and you're like not upset with yourself, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
At the time when I first heard that, I was like, that's kind of a rough thing to say.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's like, if I live the same year that I lived last year, next year, I would not, and we said this, I wouldn't be up to my standards.
Yeah, you wouldn't be maximizing your potential
No,
because you're not growing.
And that's the thing.
Yep.
I want more of that. And if you're listening, obviously you want more growth. You want more vision, more clarity, whatever it is.
Yep.
So that's why we're doing this. I think if you're listening, you should write, make yourself this list.
Yep.
3 columns, more of, less of. You can put same of and see what comes up.
Yeah.
But write down this, like, think about it. Think about it and write it down, percolate on it, focus on it, and then you can make changes accordingly.
Absolutely.
Can't talk.
Yeah, you can't make changes to things that you're unaware of. And this is just going to bring a strong level of awareness around what your year was, year in review. Nothing's going to change unless you change. Like, next year won't be better than this year unless you get better.
Yeah.
And to Kevin's point, it's like every year you should really look back and go, that was child's play, because you've learned, you've grown, you've changed, you've honed in on more of what you do want and less of what you don't want, right? So you have to kind of allow that to leak into your actions. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
Dramatic reading time.
Dramatic reading time.
I even wrote a poem today. I'm not doing it right now. I already wrote it, so I'll be able to pay attention to this. This is great.
Kevin already wrote his poem.
This is great.
All right. So this is from The Compound Effect. Thank you, Darren Hardy, for writing my favorite book of all time. It's called Creatures of Habit. Aristotle wrote, "We are what we repeatedly do." Merriam-Webster defines habit this way: an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. There's a story about a man riding a horse, galloping quickly. It appears that he's going somewhere very important. A man standing along the roadside shouts, "Where are you going?" The rider replies, "I don't know. Ask the horse." This is the story of most people's lives. They're riding the horse of their habits with no idea where they're headed. It's time to take back control of the reins and move your life in the direction of where you really want to go. If you've been living on autopilot and allowing your habits to run you, I want you to understand why, and I want you to let yourself off the hook. After all, you're in good company. Psychological studies reveal that 95% of everything we feel, think, do, and achieve is a result of a learned habit. We're born with instincts, of course, but no habits at all. We develop them over time. Beginning in childhood, we learned a series of conditioned responses that led us to react automatically, as in without thinking, to most situations. In your day-to-day life, living quote-unquote automatically has its definite positives. If you had to consciously think about every step of each individual task, making breakfast, driving the kids to school, getting to work, and so on, your life would grind to a halt. You probably brush your teeth twice a day on autopilot. There's no big philosophical debate. You just do it. You strap on your seatbelt the minute your butt hits the seat. No second thoughts. Our habits and routines allow us to use minimal conscious energy for everyday tasks. They help keep us sane and enable us to handle most situations reasonably well. And because we don't have to think about the mundane, we can focus our mental energy on more creative and enriching thoughts. Habits can be helpful as long as they're good habits. So, for the listeners, habits are everything. And if you want 2019 to be different, you're going to have to consciously shift your habits.
That's a very appropriate reading. I like that.
Oh, thank you, brother.
Good. And that was perfect. I think it was perfect length. That was great.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, first read of the new year, we're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. All right, ladies and gents, I wrote a poem, and I'm going to say it to you.
Hell yeah.
So habits and successes are related. You could even call them family, but little will change unless you change something that you're doing daily.
Ah.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
You do know what I mean.
Ah, this was good.
My goodness. So this is the first scratching the surface of the new year. If you're watching us on YouTube, next time you watch us, there should be different backdrops. So
and lights.
And lights. We're upgrading. We are upgrading. If you're listening to us, you're missing our beautiful faces.
Yeah.
But I think this was a great episode. I think it's a great place to start the new year.
Hell yes.
I think you and I came to life on this episode, and it brought some stuff up for both of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed recording, and we will talk to you later.
Talk to you soon.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.